Hey, Chelsea Cody. So Chelsea, you can take it away.
Awesome. That was such a great introduction. One, to hear you guys are going to get Chromebooks, but just to have the purpose set by your principal, I appreciate the sentiment behind why we are here today. Before I get too far into our presentation, I noticed that a couple of people still had their microphone unmuted. If you would go ahead and mute yourself, just for the purpose that while I'm presenting, while I'm going through the presentation, it won't keep flipping between my speaking, your speaking, the presentation, so on and so forth. And this is always something really good to review with your students when you are starting your instruction. So first thing I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and present my screen. And I'm going to introduce myself. My name, again, just like Chuck said, is Chelsea Cody, and I am part of the digital learning team. We have Brian, who is going to be over in our chat to moderate today. We found it really helpful that during the presentation, if you have any questions, you can type those in the chat and he's able to answer those. Today, we are, again, looking at modeling and then providing scaffolding virtually. Like Chuck said, we don't know what it's going to look like in the fall. If we're back at school, these are great tools that you can use there. And if we continue virtually, you'll be able to use them as well. So I'm going to be focusing in on Screencastify and Jamboard today. Before we get too far into the presentation, I do want to mention that we have virtual office hours every single day from 8 to 9 a.m. and then again at 2 to 3. I shouldn't say every single day because Brian and I do other things on Saturdays and Sundays, but Monday through Friday, you can find us at that link. Okay, this is also available on the teacher resource page on the At Home Learning website. And we do have a Flipgrid help topic as well. So if you post a question there, we create a tutorial similar to how we're going to do it today. And then we post that for you so that you can watch it in real time, pause it, everything as much as you need. I want to start by talking about our goals a little bit deeper. And while I am talking about these goals, if you want to go ahead and pull up the presentation for today, one, so that you have it, and then two, that you can follow along. After we finish our webinar today, I will share with your principal a recording of the webinar today. So if you didn't notice, this is being recorded. And then I will also share a link again to this presentation. But if you're wanting to see where we're going, the things I'm covering, you can access this presentation and view it as I am. First thing we're going to look at today is scaffolding and modeling with Jamboard. Okay, I'm using two words and I have these in green here because these might be new terms for you. Once we started our remote or distance learning or at-home learning, you might have started hearing words like synchronous and asynchronous used very frequently. So I want to make sure I talk about these. Synchronous is live. We are live right now. Okay, this is a live session, we're synchronous. We can use Jamboard for both synchronous, us together, and asynchronous, they can work on their own. I just want to make sure everybody has their microphones muted if you can, because I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. Again, we'll also look at Screencastify and using this specifically for modeling and annotating recorded tutorials through Screencastify. Okay, and then finally we'll have a Q&A. Go ahead,
Chelsea,
Chuck.
1 second. Hey, Mr. Dela Cruz, he already did his mic. I'm sorry, Mr. Dela Cruz.
Yeah, no worries. I heard it slightly go off there, so I thought, we're good now. Thank you for jumping in. I appreciate it. We'll have a Q&A in between the Jamboard section and the Screencastify, but we'll also do a Q&A at the end. And as I mentioned before, we do have in here. Okay, he is in our chat. He doesn't look like that over in the chat, but if you can picture him living in that chat box over there, he is there to answer any questions that you have as we are going throughout this session. A little tip for you, we get asked this a lot, so I want to take a second on this too before I start going into the tools. I am actually using my screen just like you see here on the presentation. So on the left part of my screen, I have the presentation that we're going through together. It's what you guys can see. And then on the right side, I have my screen set so that I can see everybody's faces, okay? If I turn off my grid view or turn on my grid view, and I don't need to see everybody's faces, then I could just be looking at the same screen you are all looking at my presentation. But I like to have nonverbals. So if I ask for thumbs up or smiling faces or I'm saying something, I can judge your faces. You can do this as a teacher as well. Okay, so if you're wanting to look at the presentation on one side, you could have that up, and then you could also be looking at me, which in your case, you'd see the presentation as well. When we go into Jamboard, you're gonna want to ask students, if you're using it live, to set up just like how I talked about. So you'd have the Jamboard on the left, and then maybe your classmate on the right. To start a Jamboard, you can start it the same way you start any Google Doc, and that's what this GIF is showing you. And I'll go into a little bit more of this modeling in a second. But you go to your drive, you go to New, you go to More, and one of the options is Jamboard. I like to compare Jamboard to an interactive whiteboard. It can be collaborative, or you can just use it as an online whiteboard yourself. There is an app, and we'll look at some of the features that the app has that the web version does not. In a little bit. You can also use it as kind of a parking lot. So if you've ever been to a training and they have a parking lot poster somewhere in the training and people post sticky notes of questions up there, or if you've ever done an affinity sorting with words from an article, you can do that as well. So you can put in sticky notes, images, you can mark it, highlight. It's very interactive. If I was going to use it synchronously, like we will here in a second, I could paste the link in the chat. You can click on the link, open it up, have it in another window. If I want to use it asynchronously, I can assign it in Google Classroom just like I would any other document. If I wanted to use it on Seesaw, I could add a link as a multimedia. You can picture Seesaw where you add it as a multimedia instruction or template. I could add it as a link that students access and then drop their materials there. I will say to interact with Jamboard on the student side, if they're not using the web version, they will need an app. Just like if you're using any Google Docs through Google Classroom and they're doing it on the mobile, they'd have to have the app. Here is an example from a 4th grade teacher here in Garland. If you were to click in the middle where it says 4th grade example, it would take you to her Twitter post. But this teacher, Christina, did a book talk with her students. She's a librarian, so they were talking through different books. You can see students are interacting with different Post-it notes on the Jamboard. There's different pages on the Jamboard, so they have more area. She's added pictures, very interactive there. You can also use it as a whiteboard. So a teacher from Couch, you can see she's actually using this in a Google Meet. She's using it live. Nobody else is on this, so what she has probably done is shared this tab that has a Jamboard. She's writing along on the Jamboard, but her students can see it. You can tell it's a Google Meet because I see the microphone is muted at the bottom. There's a phone, there's the camera. So I see the Meet screen, but part of that is that the Jamboard is showing. Okay, again, that was with 3rd grade. So that could be as a live. On the app, there are a couple of things you can't do on the web. One of those things is shape recognition. So Google has an artificial intelligence program that can predict shapes when you're drawing. So you can see even in this GIF drawing 2 lines. Is it legs? Is it a smiley face? It starts trying to predict that picture. So if you were using this with students and all of a sudden they've got these amazing icons in there, they've got emojis, it's probably because they're doing it on the app and then it's turning it into the prediction. Instead of it being a sloppy looking square, it is now straight. Okay, so now I want you guys to have a chance to try this out. So if you have the presentation pulled up, all you're going to do is click where it says try it out here. And if you do not have the presentation pulled up, I'm going to drop the link to the Jamboard in our chat. Make sure that works. Go ahead and pull up the Jamboard. You can start playing around with me. A couple of things that I can do here is I can change the background. I can make it squares if I'm doing some kind of graphing. I can add an image. In this case, I'm going to drag an image from my computer to put on here. So if I wanted students to interact with this image, and you can see it's just processing a little bit longer because we have people jumping on. So I could have an image. I can put in a Post-it note. I can resize my Post-it note and move that. I can change the direction of the Post-it note. Okay, I can also start marking on here. So I'm going to mark in blue because that's my favorite color. I'm gonna make it thick. Maybe I'm gonna be graphing points or something here. So not a very straight line, but it's close. Maybe I'm doing coordinate planes. Oh goodness. Okay, you can imagine that I'm modeling an actual math problem on here, not drawing very crooked lines, but I could be talking about whatever lesson I'm having on here. If I want, I can change the background to be a piece of paper. I can also use a laser pointer. So if I'd already drawn something, I can point it out with this laser and it doesn't stay on there. It's just modeling what I have. I can also put things like a Bitmoji in there. Any images that you would usually use, you could upload into this Jamboard. I want you guys to be able to play along. I'm hoping you're being able to play. I don't see anybody being mischievous and writing anything, so I don't know. You should see what people normally get very into what they're drawing on here. I get some various levels of drawing. This is an example of when we used it for a Google Boot Camp. We had teachers reflect on how they've been using Google in their classrooms. And so I was able to sort by colors. We were able to talk and organize, and then we can see those still. You can also see there's different frames. So if I wanted, I could have students, one group on one frame, one on another. Just be mindful that if somebody were to come in and delete my image, there is no version history here on a Jamboard. It really is a collaborative whiteboard. So if something less than appropriate were to end up on our whiteboard, I don't really know who that is unless I can see their cursor in real time. Okay, whoever is moving, organizing, drawing, I can see their cursor there. But that's the only way that I'm able to see who is working on it. So if I wanted to know exactly who is putting each one, I could attach it in Google Classroom and make that an assignment and make a copy for each student. In the presentation, I'm giving you 3 resources that you can go back and look at later. The first one is by another ed tech coach. She has a huge resource of every question you could possibly imagine with Jamboard. We just went over everything you really need to know in order to start using it. But if you wanted to dive deeper, you could check that out. I also included a video using Jamboard as a whiteboard, which is what we kind of just did. But we're going to level that up here in a second with a screencast and using Jamboard to record over for modeling with your students. And then finally, I included a resource for assigning it in Google Classroom. Like I said earlier with Seesaw, if you were to assign this, it would be in a collaborative way. There's not necessarily a way that you could assign one to every student without having to make a copy for every single student. So it wouldn't be as user-friendly. This might be something that you would use live rather than asynchronous. So I want to take a second and take any questions you might have. All of you should have the Nod extension unless you're on your mobile device. If you have a question that you did not post in the chat, you could ask that question now by raising your hand, and then we'll unmute and we'll move on. If there's no questions, we'll just
There's
continue.
no questions in the chat so far.
Awesome. I'll give a little wait time. It's always harder when it's digital because I can't hear the chairs rustling. I can't see the fiddling of the paper.
Actually, I think we could address this one question to the whole group. Melissa did ask about a stylus, and yes, their incoming Chromebooks will support a stylus, so that's exciting. It'll make writing a little bit easier.
Yes, and if you were using it on the Chromebook, your drawing, it would be much easier than like I was trying to do with the mouse, for sure. Great question. I've also seen some people use the iPad. They'll create the Jamboard, present it in the Meet, but then they'll join on the Jamboard on their teacher iPad and mark on there so they get some of the recognition, the shape recognition. That's a great question. Okay, we're going to go ahead and keep going and talking about Screencastify. So I'm going to give you not a brief overview of Screencastify, but I figured with this group, we could dive a little deeper. So we're not going to just talk about how to do the recording. We're going to talk about using it for annotating and then how we would share that on Google Classroom or on Seesaw. I am including a link here to Brian Dean. He has a phenomenal video tutorial on creating video tutorials on Screencastify and Flipgrid. Oh, that was a mouthful. In Flipgrid, you can also do screen recording. Okay, there are other features in Flipgrid. We're not going to dive into that today because I want you to focus in on one tool. But if you're somebody that's already very comfortable with the Flipgrid camera and recording there, you could check out his tutorial on that, and you can even dive deeper on Screencastify. I don't expect you to do this right now, but if you wanted to start adding the Screencastify extension, if you don't already have it, you can go to the Chrome web store and add Screencastify like you would any other Google extension. It's this little peach logo. It looks just like this little arrow with the screen. Okay, I will tell you, I've had issues before where I go to screen record and it's not loading right away, or if Chrome has recently updated, it's not processing my account right. All I have to do is just restart my Chrome browser, and then I'm able to use the extension. Once you have it installed, you are able to record up to 5 minutes for free. When you record a Screencastify or screencast using this extension, it is automatically saved to a folder in your drive. That's really nice because if I lose the tab or I want to go back and re-edit it later, it is already in my Google Drive. You can annotate within the camera that is in Screencastify. I can trim videos beginning and end very easily. And then from Screencastify, I can share to a couple of places. So I can share it to Google Classroom. I can publish it to YouTube, and then recently, I don't know if anybody in this group uses Edpuzzle, but you can share it directly to Edpuzzle. So if you've been using Edpuzzle, it's like an interactive video, so you could actually make your tutorial interactive where they would be answering questions throughout. For Seesaw, we'll be talking specifically about downloading the video and then adding it as multimedia. So we'll talk about that again here in a second. Like I said, I want to go a little bit deeper with Screencastify. So I'm going to model how to do the screencast and everything with marking the screen in mind, with annotating in mind, because very rarely do I ever record a screencast where I'm just talking to the camera like this. There's usually something I'm talking over, a document I want students to fill out, or something that I'm wanting to provide scaffolding on. So very rare do I ever just record myself. Other than maybe on May 4th, when I would put out like a Star Wars, well, happy May 4th or May the 4th be with you, something like that. When I'm doing just, I want them to see my face. So first thing I would instruct you to do is to take a screenshot of whatever you want to record over. The reason why we would take a screenshot of a document or a slide first is if you're in Screencastify and you're trying to record, it works best if you have a stationary screen. So first thing I did here is I have a 4th grade writing prompt. I used to teach 7th grade English, so this was right at home for me. So I took a screenshot on my Mac. I did Shift Command 4, and then I drug until it covered that whole window. After I have that saved, then I uploaded it to my drive, and it was in there ready for me to go. Additionally, if I wanted to use Jamboard, I could have my Jamboard open to a new tile and have that ready. I could put my image in there that I want to use, or I could just have a blank screen that I'm going to write on top of. But I want something that's not going to be scrolling up and down or side to side to record over. Now that I have my material in my drive, I'm going to start up the screencast. So this GIF is walking us through that. I'm going to click on the extension. I'm going to decide, do I want my webcam to be embedded? I want to make sure my microphone is on. I want to decide, am I going to do just a tab or am I going to do my whole desktop? Usually I use just a tab because my students don't need to see all of my icons around it. They don't need to see my toolbar to see what kind of computer I'm on. If I do just that tab and I'm working in that tab, I don't have to worry about all the extra things. If I'm having to show multiple tabs at once, then I might use my entire desktop. Once I start my screen recording, and you see here, I've got my image opened in my drive, and I'm starting my screen recording, then I can start actually marking over the text. So I used to teach my 7th grade students, skip the read, skip the think, focus on the write. Use the be sure tos to check over your writing. So whatever it is that I'm going to narrate to my students, I start drawing over that using the tools that pop up in Screencastify. couple of things that I do want to bring your attention to that are very helpful for students. You have a couple of settings on the cursor. So you can have a red circle show every time you're clicking. You can also have a focus, which is kind of like a spotlight. I included an annotating tool walkthrough here on this slide as well, so that if these tools are not very intuitive, which we'll review here in a second, you can go back and look at them. Nice thing about this tool walkthrough, it's actually made for students. So there are students out there that are narrating what they are doing, marking their work, and then sharing their screencast with their teachers. It's a cool way to view that. And then finally, when I'm done with my screen recording, I share that with my students, okay? As soon as I record a video on Screencastify, it will pop up to an editing screen. But if you've ever been using Screencastify before and you for some reason lost your recording, I get asked very frequently, how do I find my recording? Where is it? That's what this GIF is modeling. So I'm going to show you a quick walkthrough of all of it. But I wanted to include how to get back to your recordings on your Google Drive, okay, using the extension and where they're housed in your Google Drive so that you can go back and edit them later. And then finally, I included a slide here about how I would share my screencast with my students if I was using Seesaw. In Google Classroom, you can share directly to Classroom, or you could publish it to YouTube, link to it. You could embed that YouTube video in a Google slide presentation, wherever you'd like that video to go. But on Seesaw, it's a little bit different. You could either share the video with them as an announcement, or you can attach it to the actual assignment. So let's say I was walking through a student template of something. I would attach that at the beginning of the assignment, okay, as that video template or video instructions. So they watch my walkthrough and then they do the assignment. And to get that video, you would export it as an MP4. Okay, so now I'm going to walk through this. And I'm actually going to use our Jamboard. I'm going to go to a blank screen. To start my Screencastify, I'm going to click my extension. Sometimes it doesn't help me, but today it is. Here, I'm going to have my webcam embedded. So down in the corner, it would show my webcam. I'm also choosing just the browser tab. So I'm going to start recording. I can tell that it is recording because it's going to count me down. You can also change how long the countdown is, but 10 seconds for me makes me start hyperventilating, and then I forget what I'm going to say. So I go with 3 seconds. If I'm talking to students now, I can choose down here the pencil marking options, or if I'm using Jamboard, since I already have the marking option, I could just be writing in Jamboard and explaining whatever it is that I want to explain to my students. Okay, this could be a math problem. I could show regrouping. I can model. If I make a mistake, I can erase. Not perfect erasing. I can change the cursor so that when I am clicking, I want to hide that. When I'm clicking, I can zoom in. I can hide my cursor so that when I start writing. So right now I am moving only with the Jamboard. This is kind of weird because I'm on top of Jamboard, but I can tell this is my Jamboard laser because it's not writing over it. If I wanted to in Jamboard, I could also change a couple of things. So this is my actual Jamboard marking. I just want to show you a couple of things. So if I didn't want to mark on this on Screencastify, I could mark on Jamboard and then narrate with Screencastify. When I'm done with my recording, I can pause. And then if I'm done, I can end it. I can restart, whatever options I need there. Once I click to stop the recording, this is where it gives me the options to trim my video. So maybe I really messed up in the beginning, or at the end, I talked a little bit longer than I needed, so I can trim my video. And normally it'll let me save. Right now it's still uploading. I think because I'm on Meets, it's uploading and everything still. So I can see in the background it just finished uploading. I can save my trim. I'm going to trim it. Once my video is trimmed, everything looks nice. I'm ready to share it with my students, this is where I would choose if I want to share it to Classroom. So if I share to Classroom, I can decide what I want the announcement to say, what all I want to put there. I can publish directly to YouTube. The nice thing about publishing to YouTube is that our students are able to view YouTube videos within other documents. So if I'm in a Google slide presentation, I can embed that in a slide presentation. If I am using Seesaw, I would click where it says download right here, and I would export it as an MP4. Once that's on my desktop, then I could put that up into Seesaw as the multimedia instructions. Another one that I personally like is exporting it as a GIF. I'm a little obsessed with GIFs because they're fun, but I also like putting them in slides because they automatically play. So a lot of the presentation you saw today, I have put GIFs in there so that when you get to that slide, it's already playing. You're not clicking play, it's just going and it loops. Note, if you have not used GIFs before, it takes away the narration. So if I was saying things to my students in this video, I would not want to export it as a GIF because then it would take away what I am saying. But that is the basics of our Screencastify and scaffolding with Jamboard and Screencastify for today. I want to make sure that Brian has posted this link already in the chat. I saw it. If you click on the link, you can fill out the form for attending today. Okay, if you look on the form, there is one. It's a great question. There is a choice for modeling and scaffolding virtually. So if you choose that, fill it out, you get credit for coming today. And I see a couple of questions coming up, so I will answer these questions too as we're going. Again, there are office hours. You guys can come to our office hours even if you don't have an issue. I'm not saying we get lonely, because we don't get lonely, especially with Brian's talks. I don't know if you missed out on the book talk at the beginning, but we are great to bounce ideas off of. So if you have this idea you want to start using with your students, you can come in, bounce the idea off of us, or if you have an issue that you want to get fixed, you can come in for that too. If you like some of the things that we went over today, we have a webinar catalog going. Within this webinar catalog are all of the webinars that we have been doing, as well as the webinars that our one-to-one instructional coaches at the high school level have been doing. So if you are wanting to learn more about something we went into today, if you heard me talking about GIFs and slides and you want to know more, there is a webinar that Martine did about that actually. So you could go in and watch some of those as well and receive credit. Now that I've thrown all the information at you, I want to open up to Q&A. So I'm going to hop over to the chat, but if you have a question that you didn't put in the chat, you want to raise your hand and ask, feel free to do that.
One thing I want to caution, let everyone know, remember, if you guys are videoing a session with students, that gets a little trickier because of FERPA, so be careful with that. If you're going to use this for scaffold in asynchronous, for asynchronous learning, you want to be sure that no student names are mentioned or kids are not recorded. It should just be you.
That is a great reminder there. You are correct. I do not know what Minicam is, so I am not sure about that. Melissa, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away.
I'm so sorry. I'm the only one that's been asking questions. Because I want to learn how to do this, but I am a Seesaw. I'm first grade. I do Seesaw. So I have found that I have to make a choice between videos and links. I cannot do both. So the way we do Seesaw is we have all these slides with our slides, Google Slides with our activities. We download it as a PDF and upload it so that, and then they click View Original so that the links will work. The problem is when you download it as a PDF, like I created these really awesome audio files and none of them transferred when they clicked View Original. So I'm looking for a workaround where I can have both video and the links working at the same time.
Okay, so a couple of things there. Seesaw, sadly, if you have a student template, isn't made to have the audio on every slide and them interact with it. So you're correct, sadly, that doesn't work. The video at the beginning, if you wanted to combine all of your audio into one video, I believe you can have a video voice instruction and also a PDF attached. So here's what I am.
It's an audio. It's an audio.
Yes. So the audio, that's where I would.
Okay.
I have run into the same thing, and I don't have a good answer, and they don't have a good answer either. So, and I think that's just how they have the app set up to work. So when I am in an activity, and I modeled this quickly in the slide presentation, but I did not show you guys. If I am in an activity on Seesaw, and I'm just going to go to one I can find quickly. And I go to edit. So see here, I don't have any video over here. I'm going to edit my activity. I can add an instruction or an example, and I can have the template attached. I have not clicked on links in my template before. One thing you could try, let me think on it, Melissa, because I honestly have not tried to put in both a video and have links in the template. Most of the time, if there's something that I want them to do, just because Jamboard, or because, excuse me, Seesaw is not made to have all the things interact with it, I either split them up into different activities so that there's less that they're clicking on all at once, or I find whatever it is I need from that link and I transfer it into being a student template somehow, if that makes sense.
It does. Some of the other research I did was that if you have the advanced level of Adobe Acrobat, it allows you to go in and add audio and visual files to your PDFs, but it's a paid version, and you know, I'm cheap. So I was just looking for free workarounds, basically.
Yeah, my workaround would be chunking it, or taking whatever it is you want them to access from there and putting it into a specific activity. Brian?
Not to chase the rabbit too far down the hole, because we might have other questions. However, you can add audio to Google Slides now. I'm wondering if that would be helpful.
It's a great question. The audio doesn't transfer over to Seesaw. It flattens it. So it has the icon, but yes.
Right. But could they link to a Google slide deck? Or I know that would be hard for some of the kids to like get back to Seesaw, but maybe they could actually go to Google Slides and watch it. I don't know. Yeah.
So you're saying that you would still have all the audio. You would just, instead of inputting that as the PDF or the student template, you would just have a link in Seesaw, then they would go out to that app.
Yeah, I know that's not ideal, especially for our young learners, because a lot of times if you link a young learner out of a system, they won't come back. So I understand that's not ideal, but I'm just throwing it out there. So
brainstorming. That's how we find solutions, right? Are there any other questions before we wrap up? Check the chat one more time.